Welcome to the family, son.
Hello and welcome back to the channel and to a new year. I hope you all had a fantastic break. Let's get into my top 10 horror games coming out in 2026 because I have such sights to show you. And of course, first up we've got Clive Barker's Hellraiser revival from Saber Interactive. We follow the protagonist Aidan as he uses the Lament configuration to enter the labyrinth of hell in an attempt to rescue his girlfriend Sunny from the sadistic clutches of the grotesque Cenobites. This game is just dripping with the dark themes and aesthetics from the classic film franchise, showcasing the original twisted roster of Hellbound Hearts. So far, we've seen the likes of Pinhead, Deep Throat, Butterball and the Chatterer, but hopefully we'll get cameos from the likes of Frank Cotton and the twisted Dr. Channard. Either way, I'm very excited to explore the pleasure and pain of this franchise once again. Directive 8020 from Supermassive Games is the first episode of the second season of the Dark Pictures anthology. We join the crew of the colony ship Cassiopeia as they explore deep space looking for a new home for humanity. With the Earth close to collapse, Tau Ceti F may be their only chance. But as they crash land on the alien planet, the crew soon learn that their salvation may be further than ever before. Taking a large inspiration from John Carpenter's The Thing, this addition to the Dark Pictures anthology retains the decision-making focus that the series is known for, whilst moving towards a more traditional third-person gameplay style. And personally, I think this one change alone could bring this series to a wider audience. Next up we've got Ground Zero, which is a retro-inspired indie survival horror game coming from Malformation Games. 2 months after a devastating meteor impact in South Korea, elite operative So Yun and her Canadian partner Evan are dropped into the city of Busan to investigate the impact, where they're met with a strange growth creeping through the world and corrupting the former residents and local wildlife. Sporting classic fixed camera angles, pre-rendered backgrounds and optional tank controls, this one looks like a great experience for anyone wanting to scratch that classic survival horror itch. Chrysol Theatre of Idols is a first-person horror shooter from Vermilla Studios that's being published by Blumhouse Games. In this one, you take control of a soldier named Gabriel as he fights his way through the island of Tormentosa, a fictional place and a twisted reimagining of both Spain and its folklore. Battle against twisted, puppet-like creatures based on religious statues known as hastiados. But even though Gabriel will have access to several powerful firearms, blasting his way out of situations has a toll. The only way for him to reload is to make a sacrifice of his own blood, providing the dilemma between bullets or health. This one has big Bioshock vibes, and with its focus on combat, it's one for those that prefer a bit of action with their horror. Parasite Mutant from Isotrunia Studio is a third-person bio-horror RPG that is clearly heavily influenced by Square's cult classic Parasite Eve, from the combat right down to the title font. And coming from somebody who's been begging for another entry or a remake, this is more than welcome. Step into the boots of Nova, a psionic agent who has been sent to investigate a mysterious abandoned city island filled with horrific mutated creatures. Using its own version of the ATB gauge, this game will feel very familiar for those who've played Square's cult classic, dodging enemies and waiting for the right moment to counter with melee attacks, firearms and devastating psionic attacks. If, like me, you long to step back into the shoes of Aya Bray, this one might be what you're looking for. Right, before we carry on, I just wanted to say thank you so much for watching the video. Like and subscribe and leave a comment. Help me get to that 1,000 subscriber mark. Let's get back to it. And next we've got the remake of Fatal Frame 2 Crimson Butterfly from Koei Tecmo. and originally I wasn't going to include this in the list because it's a remake, but I just couldn't leave it out because for me it's one of the best horror games from the PlayStation 2 generation. Join twin sisters Miu and Mayu as they become lost in the woods, finding themselves in Minikami Village, a place steeped in mystery, tales of ancient sacrificial rituals, and abandoned by all except the vengeful spirits unwilling to leave. Armed with nothing but a supernatural device known as the Camera Obscura, Miu must fend off spectres, uncover the truth behind the dark rituals, and try to understand the role her and her sibling play in the village's dark practices. All I'll say about this one is if you like Japanese horror in any way, shape or form and haven't played this series, it's one to look forward to. Coming from IllFonic, Halloween brings the iconic John Carpenter film franchise to life in the form of an asymmetrical multiplayer game in much the same way the team did for Friday the 13th. Take control of the iconic slasher villain Michael Myers as he stalks and kills the unwitting residents of Haddonfield with an array of supernatural powers. Or choose to be one of 4 heroes who try and convince the residents of the lurking evil, help them escape, contact the police, or arm them to create neighbourhood patrols to even the odds against the unkillable shape. This is one for slasher fans, and being one of my favourite film franchises, I cannot wait to play this one with my friends. Liminal Point from Hideworks is another indie survival horror game, this time leaning more towards the psychological side of the genre. After a cryptic voicemail shatters her quiet life, Lyra is drawn back to the island where her band was met with a deep tragedy, the disappearance of one of the members, Myra. Fight through the mist-laden streets against horrific creatures to reveal the truth behind the night that changed her life forever. By their own admission, Hideworks is paying homage to classic survival horror games, but more interesting to me is the clear inspiration from more modern entries such as Signalis and Tormented Souls, and that is exactly why this game is staying firmly on my wishlist. Ill from Team Clout is a realistic first-person action survival horror game that leans heavily on body horror and gore. It's also a game that many of us didn't believe was ever going to actually come out, because it just looked too good to be true. Not much is known about the story, apart from the fact that the main character must traverse a large research facility in a fort, fighting their way through waves of horrifying creatures and vaguely human abominations. In their words, Ill makes you feel every second of your struggle for survival. If you can stomach the gore and high tension, I have no doubt this game will be one for you. And finally we have Capcom's Resident Evil Requiem. And even though this list isn't in a particular order, this is my most anticipated horror game of the year. In this game we follow Grace Ashcroft, an FBI analyst and daughter to Resident Evil outbreaks Alyssa, as she investigates a series of infected bodies that lead her to her own mother's murder scene. From here she's thrust into a nightmarish, decades-long conspiracy and a return to where it all began, Raccoon City. But Grace isn't alone in this terrifying journey. Series favourite Leon S. Kennedy returns to juxtapose Grace's slow-paced first-person horror sections with a more explosive third-person perspective. And with Koshi Nakanishi, the director of Resident Evil 7, back in the director's chair, I'm sure they'll strike the balance between action and horror perfectly. So, will the United States government's involvement in the Raccoon City incident finally be made public? Is there a chance that Umbrella still exists in some form? And will this mean the end to Leon? Only time will tell, and from this recording, that's not much time at all. And there we have it, 10 horror games for 2026, and even though some don't have firm release dates, I'm confident we'll be playing them this year. Anyway, that's the end of the video. Like, subscribe, and definitely leave me a comment. Help me get to 1,000 subscribers. I love you all, look after one another, and I'll see you on the next video.